today I'm just going to do a quick and dirty little tarot tag that I think is pretty fun to take a little break here. The tarot tag is hashtag my tarot identity, and it was originally done by Carrie's Mystical Musings. The idea is that each of the prompts prompt you to select a tarot deck that represents this certain part of your identity. The first prompt is the deck that matches your outward aesthetic, and for me, that would be the New Wave Tarot. I'll be honest, I wasn't entirely sure on this one at first because I thought that I might be kind of kidding myself, like, oh, this isn't my actual aesthetic, this is just what I wish that it was. But then, I flipped over the cards and it's like, no, this is this is my aesthetic. I picked some of my favorite cards to go on the top so we can see them. I think what I like about New Wave aesthetics and this deck, I guess specifically the way that this deck captures it, is it's very diverse in styles, and yet it still has a little bit of an undercurrent that connects them all together. And I guess that undercurrent is just the music, new wave music, or like the era in which it spawned, or I don't know what it is. The sort of alternative styles. But whatever it is, I think it's really cool how it can be so different and distinct and diverse, and yet so connected. So, for example, you've got like a suit and tie here, and you've got this loose, flowy, kind of hippie influence here. You've got t-shirt and jeans in the library here. You got these more natural components. You got the more classic goth looks. You got this medieval background. Like, it's all just kind of mishmash. It's all kind of weird, and yet it feels so complete. That's what I really like. Gotta love the black borders also, and the font. It just is really cool. I guess the fact that it's a collage deck also speaks to me as sort of a, gathering things and having this diverse collection that definitely wasn't all found in the same place, but just kind of gathered over time. That's also a balance between natural and man-made, and the sort of performance elements of like heavy eyeliner and crazy hairdos, and then the more loose, just natural components of it. It's pretty cool. I think it matches my outward aesthetic, and if I could look half as cool as all these people and all these artists in this deck, then I would be very happy. Next up, we got a hidden or guilty pleasure aesthetic. So an aesthetic that you like but you don't necessarily show as often, or it is a guilty pleasure. I don't feel guilty about my pleasures most of the time. This is one that I don't show very often, or I don't talk about much, and that is the represented by the Arcana Zhonghu Lenormand. Zhonghua. And it is a sort of Chinese ink wash art deck. Milo's coming in to listen to. It's really pretty. It's got this nice balance between content and emptiness, of to the point that you can just really appreciate the forms that are present in a balanced way. Like this garden card is probably the most full and lush in the deck, and it's still very balanced and has a lot of the white space. I really like this style of art. I really like ink paintings. I really like East Asian, Chinese, and just this sort of style of ink painting, I guess. I guess the reason I don't show it all that often is for one, it's very hard to achieve. There is so much talent that goes into just understanding the forms and how to balance it within a piece compositionally. Also, sometimes I'll feel a little guilty because I don't want to be one of those white people who is like, oh, look at East Asia, it's so exotic, and just this sort of oriental fantasizing, you know what I mean, that white people do and that white culture does. So I guess that's the guilty pleasure element of it. I don't feel guilty about it, and even if I did, white guilt is not worth listening to. So anyway, but this deck is really cool, and I think for a Lenormand deck in particular, works really well because there is enough to look at. It's very pretty. There's enough to grab onto, but it is simple and balanced and readable in that way for me. So, this is the Arcana Zhenghe Lenormand. This is the only Lenormand deck that I have, and I frankly don't see the need to get another one after this one. Next prompt is the deck that matches your personality. This one, also a little hard, because I feel like I was having a hard time nailing down what I would consider my personality. I was trying to, it felt like one of those interview things about, like, how would other people describe you? And it's like, I don't know, ask them. But I think that this one comes pretty close to the Goblins and Gardens tarot deck. And I think that's because some elements of my personality that I think are represented by this deck are that I am overall pretty casual, as opposed to formal. I'm goofy. I try not to take things too seriously, or, the things that I do take seriously are because they're important. But I guess I try not to take life too seriously. I am friendly, but also kind of a loner sometimes, or don't always know. I guess I'd say I'm an introvert. I need to recharge my batteries. There's just like a lot of different elements. Gee, to my personality, like a human being can have multiple components to them? Wow. Anyway, so I feel like this deck also, it's casual and it's kind of goofy. It's got a sense of humor to it, but it's not dismissive of it, and dismissive of the value of tarot. I guess it's sort of like taking goofy things and treating them with 100% seriousness or full devotion. I really like that. A lot of these figures are alone on the deck, and sometimes you'll get a few more involved on an individual card. Sometimes not. But it still feels rich and full. Like a rich, full life here. There's just a lot of different components that I like. Feels like it's kind of hard to have personality represented in image. This one I was having trouble with, but so I guess I don't have a lot of words to describe it. But yeah, I guess I'd say that this deck is my personality. Anyway, alright. Up next is a deck representing a fun fact or something unique about you. If you watched my last video, you'll know that I struggled with this one as well. I struggled with all of these, damn. But I am finally just going to go ahead and settle on the Brady Tarot. And the reason why, or the fun fact that this is meant to represent, is that I grew up in the West, and I have always been, I guess, an animal person. I was always an animal animal kid, I guess you would say. And so I think the fun fact what is the fun fact? As far as me growing up in the West, I think it's a fun fact because I was in a pretty rural area. I technically wasn't in a town. I was in an unincorporated area. And a lot of these animals are animals that I have seen in real life and somewhat regularly. We definitely had antelope running around, hawks all the time. I've seen buffalo in person, and that was part of my childhood too, was that there are just those hills where, yep, that's where the buffalo are. There they are. Whole giant fields with prairie dogs all the time. Like there are a whole bunch of different prairie dog nations that lived in different areas, and you just kind of got to know the herds, got to know the spots. And it's like, yep, that's these prairie dogs, and these prairie dogs are like this, and these ones are a little bit grabbier, a little meaner, and these ones never come out, and you just kind of get to know the prairie dogs. Not so much the jaguars. I was a little too far north for that one. Cactus all over the place. Like when you are hiking or walking or outside in any capacity, you gotta watch your feet. Definitely, I've been stuck by many a cactus in my day. So, yeah, I think that it's pretty cool, pretty fun to me anyway, how animals have always been a really big part of my life, and wild animals in particular. I feel very thankful, I guess, to have not only lived in an area where I got to experience seeing a lot of these animals out in the wild for real, but also just, again, I think if the whole idea of this tag is about things representing me as a person, I think that the area that I lived and the animals that lived there and the appreciation for those animals definitely had a big influence on me as a person. So there we go. Fun enough. Animals are always fun. So that totally counts. Next is your alter ego. I don't know how accurate this feels, but if you want something that's kind of like an alter ego, I would say the bad girl tarot sort of counts as that. I feel like if I was, for one, a little more femme, or just if I identified as more of a girl / woman, then there you go. That's my alter ego. That counts already. But also just this, like, it's got a lot of the same elements, I think, of the New Wave Tarot, but just slightly different. It feels all like a little bit different. Like it's got some different influences of like the 60s and 70s and sort of Victorian and 20s influences. They're definitely this sort of like bad girl, bad influence thing. Like if I was just slightly more punk, I could kind of see myself as being one of these like bad girl types that, middle school parents warn their wannabe Ivy League bound kids about, like, oh, watch out for them. As though those types of parents would use gender neutral pronouns. Yeah. So I guess this is sort of like, it's like punk hippie, but just in a slightly different way. See, I don't know if I'd call myself punk hippie. I'm like goth hippie. I'm gothic hippie. And this is punk hippie. So that's my alter ego, is like punk version instead of goth version. Yeah. So, if I was like a little bit more confident, a little bit more brazen, and a little bit more femme identifying, then there we go. That's my alter ego, represented by the Bad Girl Tarot here. Next is how you are as a best friend. I hope that I'm like this as a best friend. um, I went with the Colorful Tears Tarot. And the reason why, I think, is because a lot of these figures, or just a lot of the things represented in this deck, they just feel, it feels very like, if you're up for anything, I'm always up for a project, I'm up to go places. I am rarely the person to contact or reach out, but it's one of those things like any random thing, any random adventure, I am in. And I also like to try and be helpful. I like this card in particular because I have given my friends haircuts before, and so this just so I just really like that one. Yeah, I am up to just giving haircuts in someone's bathroom. This sort of shrug is like, yeah, I'm up for anything, but whatever we do, it's like I'll have fun with it, and I'll try to just enjoy company, I guess. I don't really always like when things have a super strict agenda. I like to do collaborative art. I like to just hang out and create things with people. I'm the sort of person who I will just come over and wash your dishes. I'm totally up for that. I picked this one too. I love road trips. So I guess how I am as a best friend, or how I'd like to be as a best friend, and how I like my best friends. I like that sort of just casual intimacy and familiarity where we can just kind of be around each other and try new things and just be silly and goofy with each other without a lot of pomp and circumstance, and that we can just kind of be artists together. I'm also definitely an open book, so if you want to be friends with me, I guess that's another component. Is like I like the sort of 3 a.m. slumber party deep conversation type things. Seriously, so many of these are just like, heck, I totally want to be in a band with somebody. I want to make a zine with somebody. I want to do things with people. Just be in like a big creative space with other people, I think is sort of who I want to be as a best friend, who I think that I am. Because you'll have to ask my friends, like, hey, how is Wesley as a friend? The next prompt is where you would love to live or vacation to. For that, I've got the Animal and Food Tarot by Maruka Studios. I picked this one, I think, mostly with sort of the vacation prompt in mind, because it just feels so sunny and friendly and casual. And honestly, just because one of my favorite things to do when I'm out on, away from home or on vacation or something, is I just like to look at pretty things. I like to go to museums. I like to go to parks. I like cafes, so not even just look at. I like to eat pretty things too. I love trying food when I can. Allergies can sometimes make that a little tricky, but yeah, I just like how this all feels very friendly. Lots of food, lots of just pretty things to look at. I definitely am the sort of person who likes to just wander around streets and just look at buildings. Like nothing in particular. Just like, ooh, look at that building. Look at that building. And just soak up the overall style and the overall vibe of the place that I'm visiting. And so I guess something about this whole deck and just the experience of it feels just kind of like wandering through a little town and peeping in store windows or people's windows if they leave them open. Or like looking at different lawn decorations and looking at different architectural details and just looking at the streets and just kind of wandering. I guess this feels like a very friendly, happy place to wander and eat, and I like both of those things. So gotta go with this one. Animal and Food Tarot. Next up is a deck that you use to connect to your creative side. And a lot of times I feel like I don't really need a deck for that. That's not where decks don't feel useful to me in that way necessarily, but I think that this deck has something to it with that. I don't know how to explain it. Whatever. It's the Weird Sisters Oracle. I think what feels creative, or feels like it's sort of connecting to being creative about this deck, is this. It's got a bit of raw style to it. It's not super precise or polished. You know, for an example, they've got these little diamonds here and they're clearly hand drawn. The lines are a little bit wobbly. The paint that's on here is a little bit streaky, and the swirls and the other things are just very loose and free. I really like that. I feel like it kind of makes it low pressure in a way. It makes drawing and it makes just being creative feel low pressure, which I really like, and I think I need that sometimes. I also think that it's very because it's so symbolic and because it's so open, it doesn't feel like it's super representative of anything in particular. So I think it helps my mind wander sometimes, or it just doesn't feel like there's too much to latch onto that I feel like I would be copying or like influenced by this outside thing. I feel like this is a way of connecting to creativity that I already have in like an authentic internal sense, as opposed to, for example, with like the Animal and Food Tarot, be like, oh, that's really pretty. I want to draw something like that. Like, you know, this is a little bit more open and freeing in that way. And this is cool because the Oracle itself is basically like a spell deck where each card is representing a different spell that then it gives you sort of a suggestion for doing that in the guidebook, in this little grimoire. So that's fun too, because it kind of helps bridge that gap between just kind of looking and absorbing and then actually doing. So that's pretty cool. Even though I don't often do the spells or do the things specifically listed on the card, but it's like puts me in that headspace, I guess, if that makes any sense. I really like this weft card, Weave and Weft. So that's the Weird Sisters. Next up is the deck that represents the landscape of your dreams. So I assume this is sort of like what your dreams look like or feel like. My dreams are very story-based. They are very linear. They're not necessarily realistic, but it's very... It's almost like watching a play or being in a play, and everything that plays out, it's sequential and tells a story and feels like I get a lot of story ideas from it. I'll just kind of write down my dreams, or like I'll tell my dream to Sean and he'll be like, you know, your dreams are so story-like. And so for that, I've got the Oracle of the Radiant Sun. And I picked it because each card is segmented in a particular way depending on what planet it is representing. And I guess this is kind of what it feels like. It feels like there's a lot of very distinct, sectioned components. The fact that this is like an astrology deck that is part of this system of, you know, a very established and harmonious system of cycles and planets and signs also feels very similar to what my dreams are like. And these feel a little bit like little tableaus, like little story tableaus. And that's kind of, I think, what my dreams feel like a lot. It's a little fable or something like that. Very organized chessboard here. Yeah. So that is the landscape of my dreams. I've sometimes have felt envious of people who have dreams that are so, feel so fluid and astral and magical and all these things. It's like mine feels so like straightforward in a lot of ways, but you know, everyone thinks different and therefore everyone's going to dream different. So there's that. And finally, the last prompt is a deck that represents life at this moment for you. And that is the Orphic Tarot. And I think the reason why I think that this one fits is that right now I feel like there are a lot of things that are kind of going on behind the scenes. Like I feel things moving, but it's all behind the scenes or under the surface. It feels very like the fates or like the gods or like there's just some inner machinations that are working almost on their own. And I'm trying to listen to that, and I'm trying to be aware of that, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm taking appropriate actions as needed to tap into that. That's not exactly what I mean to say, but you know, I'm not trying to leave everything up to fate as in like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to do anything because it'll all just work out on its own. But, you know, in fact, I typically like the opposite where I have control over things. And the Orphic Tarot feels very much like, look, there are all these other gods and they're all doing their thing and they all got their own lives and they're all doing their own shit. And then they get impacted by mortals and mortal lives and mortal decisions and stuff. But, you know, they're kind of, you don't have ultimate control over what happens or what they're doing. And, you know, just this sort of classical idea of leaving things up to fate or the fates or something happening despite your best efforts because it's fate or, you know, happening regardless of your best efforts, I guess, even if you don't put in efforts, like, it just feels very external, I guess. Like, yeah, mysterious, but not overwhelming, just kind of, I guess it feels a little bit like when you are watering a seed and you are starting to kind of feel the sense of like, all right, the seed's going to come up any day now. I'm pretty sure. Like you're like pretty sure that it's not a dead seed or it's not, you know, non-viable. And you keep watering it and you've made sure that the soil is the best that you can do. And then you're just kind of waiting, you know, 7 of Pentacles, whatever. And you just kind of like, just kind of waiting, just kind of looking at it. And you're kind of having to remind yourself, it's like, well, I suppose there is always the possibility that this seed is non-viable. But you know, I just kind of feel like it's not. And you're just kind of waiting and things are happening under the surface. Much like the fates, the Greek gods, that sort of story. So this is my life right now. And that's all I got. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.